Speaking of websites, another great website out there is the ETV website. You can find it by going to scetv.org. Across the top, you'll find various tabs, and if you click on Watch Video, you have access to all of ETV and PBS's wonderful programming right there at your fingertips, including our very own Making It Grow. If you click there, you will see all sorts of recent episodes, so you can go back and watch your favorite. Perhaps you've missed it if you've been outside gardening. Speaking of gardening, would you like to talk with me about it this evening? I'd love to have you join me in the chat room. Simply go to the Making It Grow Facebook page. On the left-hand side of the screen, click on the chat icon. You'll be directed into the chat room where you can log in and join in the discussion. Use Twitter, Facebook, or your Rumble Talk account credentials. We'll be chatting soon. Amanda, back to you.
Thank you so much. And we are so happy to welcome Vicki Bertinelli back tonight. After all these years, finally getting your name right, Vicki. It's not one of those South Carolina names that just rolls off your tongue. But your name is becoming important to us because you are with us, and also you're the horticulture agent for Lexington and Aiken counties.
I am.
And insects are your kind of deal. And I'm noticing more insects in my garden. Is that kind of a normal progression as the summer goes on?
It certainly is, with the warm weather and then all the afternoon rains that we're getting. This is primo insect weather. They love it.
And it's interesting, my annual milkweed, Asclepias, seems to be attracting a lot of things that I know are plant eaters, and I've been going out early and picking them by hand. It's an easy way to get rid of insects, isn't it?
One of the easiest ways, because it's in the morning, the insects are kind of slow, and you go out there with a bucket of soapy water and you can knock off the bad stuff into the bucket of soapy water and don't even have to spray anything.
No pesticides.
No pesticides.
Great. Well, and Tony Melton is joining us, and it's always a treat when Tony comes back to Making It Grow. Tony is a small fruit and vegetable specialist in the PD, and just about anybody who calls him on the telephone, to tell you the truth, a wealth of knowledge, and we are happy that you're here. And Tony, I'm kind of glad to get the rain. I haven't had to water my garden, but how is that working for our farmers?
It's been pretty good. It's been up and down. Some places hadn't had much. Some places had too much
Spotty.
at times. Yeah. It's always spotty, but you know, it's better to be, what Roland used to say, have mud between my toes than dust in my nose.
There you go.
So it's better to have that little bit of mud between your toes than not have the rain at all, man.
And it is time, a lot of our vegetable growers are putting those fall crops in, aren't they?
That's right. Actually, a lot of people started planting turnip seed, mustard seed, and thinking about planting some collards and stuff.
How about that? Those wonderful greens that we can grow in South Carolina.
Oh, they're just so wonderful.
Yeah,
I love them.
I know. And we are so thrilled tonight. We have a special guest. Della Baker is here, Dr. Della Baker, and she's in charge of special programs across the state. And tonight she's going to talk to us about an important event that's taking place for Extension. Della?
Thank you, Amanda. Tonight we're going to talk just a little bit about the 100th anniversary of the signing of the Smith-Lever Act that created the National Extension Service. So we're pretty excited about that.
Well, thank you, and we're looking forward to coming back and hearing more about that soon. And now we're waiting to see if we can visit our favorite professor at University of South Carolina, and that is Dr. John J.B. Nelson. John, are you there?
Yes, I am, Amanda. I hope you're doing well.
I am. I'm delighted to see you, and I want to say that the light looks so nice. I think we've changed some light bulbs at your house, and it sure looks good.
We had some modification of the illumination, shall we say.
Well, we like it. We like it a lot. And John, you do such a service to extension agents and citizens of South Carolina, because a lot of times we don't know what's in our yard, and people can send you photographs or samples. What's the best way to get in touch with you for that free identification service?
Okay, well, it's real easy, Amanda, and I got some real interesting stuff sent to me just today. In fact, you forwarded one that was really interesting, a plant that might be new to the state.
And it looked like a weed, too, which was unfortunate.
Yeah, anyway, my email is real easy to deal with if you know how to use email, and you could just attach an image to an email message and send that to me. Or you could mail me a plant. You could put a branch of the plant in your in a little baggie and send that to me directly to my mailing address. That usually works.
Okay. Well, we will be happy to do that, and we will come back in a little bit. Give us a hint. Is it real hard, or is this a pretty easy skate for us tonight?
Well, I think it's pretty easy, but it's a plant that reminds me of some snakes.
My goodness. Well, I like snakes, so that's fine with me.
Snakes are good.
Okay, they sure do. They can eat a lot of moles and chipmunks and squirrels. Okay, thanks, John. We'll see you in a little bit.
All right.
Okay, and we've got our first call. How about that? And it comes from Blythewood. Charles is calling us. Charles, are you in that sandy part of Blythewood that we hear about?
No, I'm actually on the opposite side of the interstate. We have more clay and rock than the eastern side. I'm on the west of I-77.
Well, I guess everything has its own challenges, doesn't it? And how can
Yes,
we
it
help you?
does.
How can we help you tonight?
Well, I've got a giant Bradford pear in the front of my house, and we planted English ivy. And it has grown to the top of the tree, and this tree is probably in the neighborhood of 40 feet tall. And it's on the trunk, the main trunk of the tree. Will that kill it? Will it damage the tree?
Well, I'm glad that you asked that because English ivy on trees can be problematic, and I don't like it on my trees for several reasons. It can smother them. And how do you think a good way to handle that would be, Vicki?
If you want my opinion, I'd remove both of them.
But the Bradford pear he
Yeah.
has, and it gives shade, and he wants to keep it for a while.
Right. There's actually, I think we have a fact sheet on the HGSE about English ivy.
Joy
One of the
Williamson, I
basic
think.
plants.
Yeah.
It's very invasive. And Tony, it's not that hard because I think if you cut it carefully near the ground level, cut just through the ivy roots, and then what would you do from there? What is there something you can paint them with?
There is. There's some things, glyphosate or triclopyr can be used to paint those little stumps, a little bit of the plant. Just paint that.
So cut
with
through
that
the ivy stems down low.
and do a
paint-
fresh cut.
Fresh
Once
cut. Don't go inside and eat a hamburger.
That's right. Do it fresh, and it'll go in and go down and kill the roots of the plant. And actually, the triclopyr do better than the glyphosate will. And I don't like to have it around a tree trunk either because of insects. I know Vicki is, she's the insect lady because they kind of hide in there and they can hide
Can
around
cause
the
some
bark.
problems. And then you will find that the ivy will just over about a year, usually it takes the ivy to kind of decay and fall out of the tree, and then you can enjoy that pretty Bradford pear, which sounds like it's kind of a big specimen because they don't usually get that big. So I guess yours has been very, very happy. John is calling us from Camden, right up the road. John, we're happy to hear from you tonight, and what's going on up in your part of the world?
What is going on?
Yeah, well, how can we help you? Or what's going on, too?
Oh, I had a couple of questions
All right.
concerning fig trees.
Yes?
Figs.
What are your questions, please?
Well, the first question is we have two types of fig trees. One produces a golden colored fig, and people around here called it a golden fig tree.
Okay.
I was wondering, is there another name for that type of fig or tree?
And what's
and
your... Okay.
And the second question is that we know how to make preserves out of figs, but how do we find a recipe for canning figs?
All righty. Tony, fig is an old-fashioned plant in
certainly is.
landscapes. I don't know what the golden fig is. Have you ever heard?
There's about 200 different varieties of figs. If you ever been on the California fig website, there's this picture after
But
picture
the ones
of
that
them.
we can grow here are different from the ones in California.
But we
too,
can
so-
grow a lot of them. I even
yeah.
have one of those in my yard,
Do you
in
really?
fact. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. I
Do you have another
and then
name
we
for
got
golden?
the brown turkey, and we got Celeste. It probably would be a Celeste, and then brown turkey would be the browner
Okay.
fig.
Darker one.
Yeah, the other one.
So we don't know exactly what yours is, and that's what happens. There's so many cultivars, and people don't keep up with it. Sometimes they just get a little cutting from somebody. If you would like to get recipes from that at the Clemson HGIC Home Garden Information Center, we have good information about preserving foods there as well as growing plants. And I would encourage you to get in touch with them. And there are many and plentiful ways of keeping those figs so you can enjoy them throughout the year.
My mother used to do a fig preserve. Oh, That's one of my favorite things, remembering her.
I know. Everybody, I think, those biscuits she made with those figs on them was anything better.
Nothing better.
Lauren is up in the upstate Travelers Rest, a beautiful part of the world, and she's calling us, or he, Lauren, could be a boy's name too, I'm not sure, but we're glad you called us, Lauren, and how can we help you tonight?
Yes, me and my mom watch your show all the time. My mom's name's Joyce. She says Kate.
Thank you. We're waiting to her too.
But we've got a problem with centipedes. We have some really small centipedes out. We garden in containers and all in our pots. And even when we lift the pots up to transfer, we're finding all these little centipedes.
Oh.
And they have actually killed every begonia I have. They have burrowed up inside the begonias and ate them. And I've had to dig up all my tubers from my begonias, and it's horrible. And we want to know how to get rid of the centipedes.
Okay, well, you are lucky because we got the bug gal here.
That's it.
And all the centipedes happen with the 6 legs. I bet Vicky's going to have a solution or a hint for us. What do you think she can do?
I think it might be garden millipedes that she has. And a lot of times
They're orange, those big orange ones that walk?
they're small and skinny and brown.
Oh, those. Okay.
They've got what the millipedes will have 2 legs
on each
per segment.
Okay.
Or actually 2 pair of legs per segment.
All right.
And most of the time, if you'll dry the pots out a little bit, the medium might be too wet, or you've got some water sitting in the saucers. Sometimes you can have an issue with millipedes moving into the plant. Most of the time, they don't warrant to be sprayed or anything like that. And if they're present, sometimes they can be, if things start to rot in a pot, if there's some root rot in there, they can be eating some of the rooting rots.
Because they really,
rotting roots.
don't they mostly feed on already decaying material?
Yep.
So they're probably not killing the begonias.
Probably
Sounds
not
like
killing
an
the begonias.
overwatering, or perhaps, Tony, when we have a lot of rain, sometimes if we've got a pot, we may just have to bring them in and shelter them, put them in a place where the rain doesn't hit them every day so they won't get too waterlogged.
And especially take that bowl out from under them so that water's not held in there, because they just love that.
Wet
They'll
spots.
And like you said, they love organic matter. That's what they're eating, dead, dying things.
Not fresh plant
Not
material.
fresh plant.
Okay. Well, we're going to check it of Teresa and find out if we've got a lively chat room or if we've got one that's decaying and underwater. What's happening, Teresa?
I think we're very much above the water and definitely having a lively conversation. We have 12 speakers and 3 viewers currently open. I just saw another post roll in. People are not sure whether they should do the happy dance about the rain or kind of lament that now the grass is growing like crazy and they have to spend time outside mowing. But at least they know now they can leave their grass clippings on the lawn. And if you're looking for more information about environmentally friendly or watershed friendly landscaping, you can visit the Carolina Yards website. That's clemson.edu/CY for Carolina Yards. Even get your yard certified. We've reached over 100 yards this year, which is a milestone. In conjunction with 100 years of extension. Amanda, back to you.
Thank you, Joyce. That's exciting that we've got over 100 yards certified. That's a really helpful website. I would encourage people to go there. And one of the things they remind us is to group plants that need the same watering schedule. And I've been trying to do that in my yard. And it really does help. Sometimes you can pick a drier area of your landscape to plant those plants that don't care about being quite so wet. But right now we have someone who doesn't worry about that because he says his plants are all pressed between pieces of paper in the wonderful A.C. Moore Herbarium at the University of South Carolina, and that's Dr. John Nelson. And John, we've come to you to find out about the mystery plant.
Okay, we do have a nice mystery plant. I want to say, we were talking about figs already. I had a wonderful jar of fig preserves given to me by Marie Land the other day, and they're just out of this world.
Quite a cook.
Oh, yeah. But the plant that we have tonight is not a fig. It is, in fact, a native member of the carrot family.
My goodness.
And it's a plant that's quite widespread in the eastern USA, and it likes to grow in damp pine lands. So you'd see this basically all over the coastal plain, and it gets into the other counties of the upstate as well. It likes to grow pine flatwoods or savannas and sometimes along roadsides. And when it first starts coming up, it produces these very handsome, sharp pointed leaves that look for all the world like it might be a yucca coming up. And even the leaf blades have little strands on the margins, just like a yucca does sometimes. But when it blooms, and it's in bloom now, it'll send up a flower stalk that will have clusters of small flowers in very tight groups up on the top of the branches. And they're sort of pale greenish white, and they're not real pretty individually, but altogether the plant is quite striking. I think it's very handsome as a wildflower. And of course, it is a native species, and it's in the carrot family.
Woohoo! And we know that the carrot family, the Umbelaceae, is that how it's close enough, John? Umbelaceae?
That's pretty close.
Pretty close for government work. Really attracts insects, and if this is what I think it is, boy, this plant is just the most exciting thing in the world to look at it up close.
Really?
And in the pine lands, a lot of people wear high boots and tough pants because sometimes those pine woods are full of a certain kind of snake.
Yeah, that's true. And some people, I think, have decided that this plant has a certain propensity for keeping rattlesnakes away.
Because it's in control of them, like the Lord and your Lord and
Master.
Okay, and the first part is
Rattlesnake.
okay, rattlesnake. Put the other part onto it.
Okay.
Rattlesnake.
Master.
Okay, is it rattlesnake master?
That's it, the rattlesnake master.
That's a
It's
new one
my
on
favorite
me.
plant. It's just so beautiful.
I've seen it, but I didn't know.
And honestly, John, it's so much fun. I got to go to that wonderful arboretum up near Asheville. Has a quilt made of all kinds of different flowers, and each section had different insects on it. And that rattlesnake master, Vicki, I wish you'd been there with me. It had the most wonderful, unique collection of insects.
Sounds like a plant I might like to see.
Ooh, I think you would, John. That was so much fun. And so I didn't realize that you find it in those pine woods. So Tony,
Yeah.
I bet saw it growing up in McBee.
Yeah, if you go down to Francis Marion, you'll see it growing on the sides of the road.
If you see it, stop the car, whoever you are, and safely, and get out and go and look at it, because you will see some pollinators to beat the band. It's a great plant. John, I'm sorry that y'all can't get keep the pollinators with the plants when y'all press them, but I know you can't have insects in the plant collection.
Sometimes we do. Sometimes a little bug will get mashed into the specimen.
Well, we have a little surprise guest who came to visit us tonight too, that you might get to see a little bit later. John, thank you so much. That was really fun, and we can't wait till next week. And if you start school, we hope is it next week that you'll be starting?
It's the 21st that we start.
Okay. Well, we'll expect you to not have any wrinkles next week because school hadn't started yet. Night. We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Daniel's calling us from York, and we're so glad to talk to you, Daniel. How are things up your way, and what can we help you with?
Well, I just want you to know that I love y'all's show.
Thank you.
And I'm having some issues, and I've had issues since I put this raised garden in with my squash plants.
With your what?
Every squash plant that I put in is the leaves are getting a white fungus on them, and the squash is literally it's rotting away as the squash becomes on the flower.
Yep. Well, that is a problem that we have often. We've got some high humidity, dampness. What's going on with that squash?
Powdery mildew. It looks like powder, like talcum powder somebody sprinkled onto the leaf. And it will just totally, it's not because of you got a raised bed. That has nothing to do with it. It's just all this high humidity. And it hits the squash leaves and they just kind of dissipate.
And that's what he says is happening with this little squash fruits as well.
And
is there
squash
something he should
fruits-
try to do? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Now, squash fruits could be another rot that's called cornifera rot that actually causes the fruit to rot on the plant, and that's usually caused, and it also affects the powdery mildew if they're too close together.
Oh, really?
You got them too crowded together,
Yeah,
you can
yeah,
get
yeah.
fruit rot,
Okay.
cornifera fruit rot, and more downy mildew because they're movement.
All right, so
Very
in the
important.
future, maybe in an raised bed, people do squeeze things in.
That's it. They like to do
Yeah.
that
And I
square
understand.
foot gardening and
Yeah.
all that real close
Yeah.
together.
But when you get these humid days, is there anything that he can do at this point?
Well, actually, one of the home remedies is some baking soda.
Baking soda.
Yeah, about 2 tablespoons per gallon of water.
All right.
And it is pretty good, but I hate to say it, squash should be grown early in the spring.
Okay. So really, let's just, yeah.
Because there is problems that you can't even control, not even commercial people, in the fall with squash.
So
And
this time of year, just start looking at those fall crops and wait, and next spring get the squash in as early as possible.
That's right,
Okay.
early.
That sounds good. Well, we got a caller from Columbia, where I grew up and where my sister still lives, and Mark is calling us. Mark, thank you for calling us, and I hope we can help you with your problem.
Yes, I want to know how you can eliminate pigweed in your fields.
How you can eliminate pigweed in your field. If I knew that, I would be lying in the mountains of North Carolina on a chaise lounge with
true.
somebody bringing me iced tea,
Exactly right.
because that is a terrible, terrible problem. Tony, will you address that from the agronomics point and give some suggestions too?
Well, it's very difficult. The only way that we can do it in agronomic crops is to put down a pre-emergent herbicide that keeps it from coming up, because once they come up, they're very difficult to control, Amanda. Really hard. And I've had some vegetable plots and some research work, and I tell you, it seems like every pigweed I pull, there's 4 that takes its place. Because every time you break that ground's crust and you break up,
More seeds come up.
more seed comes to the surface and come up, Amanda.
And one of the things that we see now when I'd ride back and forth to work from St. Matthews to Sumter, I see people in the fields, and actually what they're doing is they're out there with machetes and things, grubbing the pigweed up out of the field. You can't just cut it off, and you can't leave it there. It is a large problem, and never letting it go to seed in your field is the best thing. As Tony said, it is a very difficult problem.
One plant can produce enough seed for a whole field.
At any rate, it is a problem. Weeds are the downfall of many gardeners, and you've got to stay on top of them. But we've got a caller from Myrtle Beach, and that's Stella. Stella, are weeds giving you a fit, or is there something else we can help you with tonight?
Well, thank you for taking my call. And
You're welcome.
I love you and your panelists. I've learned so much.
Oh,
my
thank
problem is my hibiscus. It has gotten tremendous. I bought it 5 years ago, and my husband put it in this big planter. And we bring it in every winter, cut it back. But this year it's over 8 feet high, and the stalk has gotten very thick. And I was wondering, could I possibly plant it in the ground, or will I risk losing it, or just cut it back and bring it back in again?
Okay. She's been bringing this hibiscus, and it sounds like it must be one of the tropical ones if she's been bringing it in. We have some hibiscus that can stay outside all winter, and they die back and come back. But I would think instead of trying to keep it alive all winter, don't you think she could cut it back, Vicki?
Yeah, I don't see why she couldn't cut it back.
It'll come back, don't
Yeah.
you think? Yeah. So you cut it back, bring it in, and
But
then
I would keep bringing it in and taking it back out, because I don't think that this is one that's going to live
outside.
permanently outside.
And she doesn't have to give it a huge amount of water, just don't let it completely dry out.
Correct.
Okay, great.
Yep.
And
you never want to let the medium completely dry out, because once that medium dries out, it is so hard to wet again.
Oh, that's true.
So
yeah.
I would keep it just nice and even moisture.
Okay, all right. Tony, did you bring some fun things for us?
Oh, I did. I got so
If
many
Tony's here,
different
you know we've got fun things, because
Yeah.
Tony is the man for bringing fun things.
I wanted, first of all, I got a little friend here.
Oh.
And
But you didn't know he was here till you got here, I don't think.
Yeah. Leaf rollers. Canna is the world's worst thing, and it just kind of sticks
them.
these leaves together and rolls them up. And we got them here pupating. You can just, the caterpillars are already pupating and turning in
Can we get that
a
out there where we
butterfly.
can see it?
a moth, in fact.
Okay, there. Okay. Vicky's going to get that caterpillar and show the pupa out. Vicky, why don't you just, there you go. Can they see? Oh, you're getting him out for us.
was
So
gonna say,
he
I can get it
made
out.
a little covering on the leaf that's a protective, tough shield, isn't it?
Yep.
And there is the little insect in the pupal stage, very small, but they can be very damaging. And one nice thing about canna lilies, Tony, is you can cut them off several times during the summer and have them come back.
Oh, yes.
But did you have a little friend in one of these?
Yes.
You going to tell us about that friend, or are you saving him for?
Well, I was going to also say, well,
Okay.
this is Vinca. It has leaf rollers on it too, and I
Vinca,
didn't.
I did not know.
I didn't till a couple of years ago. They started attacking my Vinca, and it would just roll up those leaves and then destroy
And that's
them.
usually just such a pestio plant, hard to. But
Here
in
comes the
here we
friend.
have the
Here-
real exciting.
Oh, look at there! Oh, green tree frog.
Let's see. He's right here. Oh, there he is
Yeah, there he is.
on the desk. Can y'all see? There he is. Hey, look at
He
him.
hitched a ride with that. Since it was
There
all
he
rolled
was.
up because of the leaf rollers, he got inside there. I reckon he might be eating.
Yeah, I think this is an actual green tree frog.
And I'm going to hand him back to Vicki, and we're going to put him in a very safe place, and he's going to go home with the person who brought him here. He's a good date, Tony. He's going home with the person who brought him. Isn't that what they're supposed to do? That was so much fun. So, Tony, we don't worry about putting a lot of pesticides out or doing anything of these leaf rollers generally, do we? Because can't you just cut them back and get nice new leaves to take their place?
Yeah, real quickly
Yeah,
because
real
they really
quickly,
grow.
because it's such a big,
They
vigorous
grow,
plant.
grow,
Yeah.
grow.
And they add a lot of structure and color to the garden.
They certainly do.
Yeah.
Love them.
Okay, thank you so very, very much for that wonderful show and tell. And really that Vinca can be a little bit invasive. Maybe it's good that some things can hold that Vinca in line, don't
That's
you think?
exactly right. It can take over the world.
All righty. Well, Teresa, we hope that chatters are taking over the chat room, and I know y'all always have interesting questions and responses. So how is everything going in there tonight?
Everything is going quite well, I would say. We have a good mix of regulars and I think some newbies as well. So much conversation that which seems to be a growing trend, have a hard time keeping up with all the questions and answers. But thankfully, there are other knowledgeable folks in there who are also chiming in as part of the discussion. Thought I'd share an interesting photograph with you that was sent in. It was actually emailed to us, and Vicki, who's on the panel tonight, was able to answer the question. But this is a photo of Confederate jasmine, and the viewer said she had planted 3 of them, but one of them had these strange beans on it, and it turns out that this is just the seed pod. So this is normal behavior. This is the plant doing what it needs to do to make new plants. Another interesting fact about Confederate jasmine is it's not native to the U.S., even though it has Confederate in its common name, and it's not a jasmine either. So don't be fooled by those common names. Remember, the scientific name gives you more information, even though it's hard to pronounce. I think now we're ready to check in with Amanda and her guest.
I am so happy to welcome Dr. Della Baker, who came out from Clemson to talk to us tonight about a very exciting event for extension across the country. Della, thanks for coming, and tell me, what's this 100-year and centennial celebration recognizing?
It's recognizing the signing of the Smith-Lever Act in May of 1914.
And what makes that so important?
Well, people tend to ask, why do we even need an extension service? But if you think way back the late 1800s, the research that was being generated at the colleges and universities was not really being used as intended by the people who really needed it. And when I say the people who really needed it, I'm talking about the working class people, such as the farmers and people in the rural areas.
So that information wasn't filtering down?
It wasn't filtering down from the university as it was intended to. So the legislation was signed, and that legislation mandated that there would be an expanded programs in the areas of agriculture, home demonstration, and vocational education to the rural areas. And also that meant, Amanda, that professional educators would be placed in the communities to serve the people.
So it took the information and the people from the campus and took it where it was needed.
Yes, and that's, in very simple terms, it was taking the university to the people.
And in South Carolina, we have a lot to be proud of, because I think one of the gentlemen who thought that this was necessary and saw that it came about was a native South Carolinian.
Representative Ashbury Francis Lever. And he was a native of Lexington County. And he was also a lifetime member of the Board of Trustees at Clemson. I think he was a Newberry College graduate, served in the South Carolina House of Representatives and also in the U.S. Congress. And so we have really should be very proud of him being a native son.
And I understand that he didn't have to look too far to find an example that states could use upon which to build their extension programming.
Yes.
And
yes.
where was that? How far did he look?
Right there at Clemson, right at Clemson University. At that time, it was called Clemson Agricultural College. And Clemson was engaged in extension type work before the passage and signing of the Smith-Lever Act. In fact, in the early 1900s, there were tomato clubs for girls and corn growing clubs for boys. Home demonstration programs were being taken out to the people, to the rural areas for the women, as well as off-campus farm demonstrations. So Clemson was effective at doing that before the legislation was signed.
And there was a unique way of caravanning that was developed. Tell us about that fascinating parade.
The extension train.
Yes.
The extension demonstration train. It would go out, this was also in the 1900s, early 1900s, would go from community to community, taking the demonstrations out to the people.
So they had demonstrations set up in the train cars?
Inside the train cars,
Really?
and also faculty were hired, and faculty would be on the train, and they would explain what the latest innovations were, or the latest techniques or best management practices. And also, on occasion, some of the faculty would leave the train and take the information to such as a farm area. To help farmers. So it was an innovative thing back then.
And
it would reach about 13,000 people back then. But
that was effective.
Yes.
And a lot of people back then. We were a smaller state.
Yes, yes.
Boy, things have changed in 100 years.
Things have changed. Things have changed. Our agents now are making contacts with over 200,000 people in a year, and it's growing.
And we're using modern edge technology.
Modern technology. Everything from Facebook to YouTube, whatever you can think of, Instagram, podcast, all of that.
And yet we still also have that one-on-one visiting the farmers
Yes.
in the field and taking the information
Yes.
and seeing that we can have the best quality of life for our citizens.
Yes, that's our mission.
And who knows what will be in 100 years, but I think Extension will still be here finding a way to improve the quality of life. And
Yes.
someone else will be sitting in these two stools
That's right.
having that conversation. But I want to thank you for coming and having the conversation with me today.
Thank you for inviting me. It was a pleasure.
Come back down and tell us about things that are happening anytime you want to.
Will do.
All righty. And we are now going to go back and check in with Teresa once again with her chatters.
Thanks, Amanda. You know, sometimes the flowers in our yard or the plants don't do exactly what they want them to do. So one of the questions that we were just chatting about had to do with hydrangeas not flowering. And the problem might be if you have a big leaf hydrangea, they bloom on old wood. So you don't want to prune them after August 1st, because if you do, you risk not having that old growth for those flowers to develop on and to bloom the next year. So today is already what, August 5th. So if you haven't pruned, don't do it. I thought we'd also take advantage of Tony Melton's expertise. While we're here, we had a person in the chat room asking if there was a way to let their Bermuda grass grow but prevent the centipede from coming in. So Tony, any thoughts on keeping centipede out of the Bermuda?
Well, in fact, Teresa, Bermuda is so vigorous. It takes over the world, and it's hard to keep the Bermuda down. It's going to be taken over without anything. So it should be just naturally that way. But if you really wanted to do it, there is some sprays that can be put on. I'm thinking one is MSMA, which is maybe a little hard to find for some of your homeowners, but you need to read the label and follow the label, and that will work rather well and totally take out the centipede and leave the Bermuda, Teresa.
And Tony, I think there are times of years when we use those sprays more effectively than others. Is this the time of year to use it, or do we not want to do that in the heat of the summer?
Yeah, it actually burn the Bermuda a little bit in the heat of the summer. So you have to be very careful when you put on those chemicals, like you say, Amanda.
All righty. We are so happy that we have we have a wonderful partner at Clemson, and that is the Your Day program. I just love to listen to it. And tomorrow, this is the Snake Night program because we had Rattlesnake Master, and they're going to have some people from South Carolina DNR talking about the importance of snakes in the ecosystem. And if you're plagued with field moles or voles or things like that, well, guess who's really good at eating those little fellas up? So do tune in at 12 o'clock tomorrow for the program on snakes. And then on Thursday, Dr. Bob Polumsky, who is just a fountain of knowledge for us, is going to be joined by Meg Williamson from the Plant Problem Clinic. Boy, does she know her stuff. Do listen in. You will find out what is happening to gardeners right now. And this is all on SCETV Radio, a great place to leave your station tuned. Wonderful information and music and programs throughout the day. And on Wednesday and Thursday of this week, you'll learn a lot about snakes and gardens and natural environment of South Carolina. Okay. We had a grand time going down to Georgetown, where Jack Whetstone, our fellow agent, was for many, many years doing research and work. And we went down there to see the Rice Museum and learn about the history of rice in South Carolina. We are in Georgetown, where a design of nature created the perfect environment to grow pre-industrial rice. And I'm with Jim Fitch, the director of the Rice Museum. Jim, how important was rice to South Carolina?
Rice made South Carolina rich. And in the years before the war between the states, South Carolina was the second richest state in the Union after Massachusetts.
How did the tidal system here, the rivers flowing into Winyo Bay, tell us a little bit about that and how that contributed to the incredible number of rice plantations y'all had here?
Well, when rice was first introduced sometime in the late 17th century, the Europeans grew it on a European model, and that was just barely successful. Then the early settlers found that the slaves they were bringing in from West Africa had knowledge of a tidal flow method of agriculture as they were growing rice in West Africa. And it is the West African technology that made rice growing a success in South Carolina.
When we see people who are converting land to agricultural use these days or back and forth, it just takes a couple of months. What was it like when they had to try to make a rice field back in those days?
Well, they had to clear a huge virgin swamp with all kinds of trees, cypress, tupelo, every type, and it is compared in labor to the building of the pyramids. So you can see how labor-intensive it was.
Now, the trunk system also was an adaptation, I think, of a system, and that allowed them to use the rivers?
The trunk dock was the big invention that made tidal flow agriculture successful, and it was a floodgate. It could be opened to let the water in when the fields needed to be wet, and it would keep the water out when the fields needed to be dry. And it was a very important adaptation to rice growing.
And then also we know that the milling of the rice, all of those processes originally were done in the West African style, I believe. And what all did that entail?
Well, you'd have to, take the rice off the chaff, and so a flailing stick would be used for that. And then you'd have to remove the chaff from the rice, and then you'd have to pound the rice to get the husk off of the rice. So all of these were rudimentary in the early days, and then went into, after the Industrial Revolution, went into big rice mills.
Rice, of course, was exported by tons and hundreds of thousands of tons. But one of the things that had to happen was we had to have commerce back and forth between the plantations, and you've got the coolest sailing ship. Tell me about this.
Well, this is a Browns Ferry vessel. It dates from 1730. And it is the oldest colonial-made vessel in the United States. It is made of local wood, live oak, white pine, and cypress. And it was probably built about 1700, which was very early in the development of our state. And it was a commercial vessel. And it has pinpointed the early American shipbuilding industry about 50 years earlier than was previously thought.
Now, this has not been in the Rice Museum all that long. Where did it spend most of its life?
It spent most of its life in the Black River under 25 feet of water in a Toyota. So they found it in 1974 by hobby divers. And then in 1976, the year I began at the Rice Museum, it was raised from the Black River.
And it was preserved by being under all of that wonderful mud and sludge and lack of oxygen.
Right. And then it was preserved further in a vat of polyethylene glycol at the University of South Carolina. The Department of Anthropology and Archaeology took it over, and it stayed there for about 20 years.
After slavery was abolished, how did life in the Low Country contribute to the Gullah community continuing?
Well, the freedmen were justifiably afraid that they might be enslaved again after they were set free in 1865. And so they sought to be as remote as possible from the white plantation owners and the white population. So in some cases, they even dragged their slave cabins as far away as they could get. And then their communities became quite isolated, but quite insulated too. And the Gullah culture began to thrive in these communities.
And you have examples, I think, of traditional and modern interpretations from actual members of that community.
Absolutely. We're standing here in the Mason Gallery at the Rice Museum with 20 and 21st century interpretations of the Gullah experience. And we also have more traditional items too. We have, the Gullah baskets and jewelry and things of this nature. And we also have an exhibit here at the museum, The Footsteps of the Plantation, which explores the archaeology of a plantation from the slave street.
I've had a good time with my visit down here today, and I know other people would like to come and learn more as well. What's the best way to find out about the Rice Museum?
Well, first of all, you can come here and visit. That's the best way, 633 Front Street in Georgetown, or you can go to our website, ricemuseum.org, and learn a lot about it, too.
We've had a grand time, and I think that all this talk about rice has everyone hungry. Let's go find a place to have some lunch.
Okay, we have some good restaurants.
Georgetown is a beautiful city in South Carolina, very welcoming and accommodating to visitors. I would encourage you to go and be certain that you visit the Rice Museum while you're there. Tony, I want to thank you for the peas that you brought in tonight that I put into my hat. And tell me what kind of peas I've got on my hat.
It's just one of your Crowder peas. Actually, it's a new variety that Clemson's looking at maybe getting past as a variety in the state. So it is a nice Purple Hull variety. And I want to tell the folks, anybody who is a good gardener should have peas in their garden because they love our heat in South Carolina. We call them Southern peas because they like the South.
They do well here. And then speaking of heat, I've got a few heating examples here. And you told me, you said that this orange one is
habanero. It's 300 times hotter than the
jalapenos.
They're very, very hot. I call it inedible, so I don't know what
well, it's a good Clemson color, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Anyway, it was a lot of fun, and these are fun. It's fun to grow these hot peppers. The cayenne, which is the little green one, we put in bottles of vinegar, and we'd like to put a little vinegar on our southern peas, I think, and then on our collard greens and all too. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It all just kind of comes together in the South, doesn't it?
Oh, it does.
It sure does. Well, Mike is calling us from Woodward. We're so happy to hear from you, Mike. And what's happening that we might be able to help you with?
Good evening. How y'all doing?
We're doing great. Thank you. Hope you are too.
Good. Yeah, I love your show. I want to thank you all for being here. I have a question about Bronze Carlos muscadine.
All right. What's your question?
I have, my vines are 4 years old, and they have finally produced, and boy, did they produce.
Ooh.
How do I know when is the best time to pick them?
Well, Tony, you are a muscadine eating fella.
I know it. I have them in my yard. I love Carlos. It's a good sweet
it's a
variety.
good one, isn't it? Real good. And unlike bunch breaks, we can't just pick them all at the same time. So how do you go about harvesting your muscadines?
Well, they turn bronze.
They turn
Actually, they go
bronze.
from green to bronze.
Yeah,
And that's when it's time to harvest them. And they'll come right off the plant real quickly. And like you say, there'll be some green ones and some bronze ones. So yes, it takes time. What I usually do, I got all that growth down. I usually cut that growth off so I can get up under there and see them, man.
So it's all right to go ahead and cut the growth off when they're almost all completely ripe?
Almost ready.
Okay, so you can get in there and get to them.
So you get in there and see them a little bit better.
Okay. And then I guess you can hold a bowl or something, a big bowl under there, so they'll kind of fall in there. And then you pop them in your mouth, and then you can spit the seeds out, or you can even make relish out of the skins too. There are lots of fun things to do. We have Michael call us from Richburg. Michael, we're glad to hear from you tonight. And how can we help you?
Yeah, I had a question about the eastern leaf leg bug and what we can do to manage them.
The eastern leaf leg. Well, that's one of the ones that I've been picking off in my garden early. They don't move all that fast, but how easy is that to control if you don't just hand pick?
Yeah, those are Florida leaf-footed bugs. You can spray them with any kind of broad spectrum insecticide, but you need to think about the fact that you're also spraying something that could kill beneficial insects too. But those are just like the Japanese beetles in the morning. They'll sit on those plants, and you can go around and just knock them right off the plant into a bucket of soapy water, and then you've got rid of them. You don't actually have to pick them. You can just set the bucket underneath the plant and hit them, and they'll fall right in the bucket.
Or if you like to pick them and squish them, you can do that.
It makes you feel good.
Yeah,
Makes
it
your
does.
fingers stink.
Makes your fingers feel bad, but it makes you feel good. I want to take this opportunity to thank Della Baker for coming and being with us. And Della, I think you have a little phrase that Mr. Lever wrote that I think encapsulates his idea and what happened. So if you would share that with us, we would be so appreciative.
I do, Amanda. This is a quote from Ashbury Francis Lever, and it says, if this information were made available to the farmer, it would form a complete and absolute revolution in the social, economic, and financial condition of our rural population. And I think that's what Extension did. And if you'd like more information about the Extension Service or about the 100th celebration, I invite you to go to www.clemson.edu/extension/100. And thank you, Amanda, for having me.
Thank you, Della. And I want to thank Tony Melton, who made the beautiful display that is behind Della with all the wonderful, Tony, I think you've got an old and a new picture under each one, and it's just wonderful. And we do thank you. Della, come back soon. We'd love to have you here. I want to also thank Morgan Singleton, who is our ETV intern this summer. Morgan, come in, please. Come in. I need my box to stand on. Morgan is a student at the University of South Carolina. He plays fabulous music on Saturdays. My son's Simpson, Morgan Simpson plays fabulous music. My son says that he's one of the smartest kids he's met, and he has done a marvelous job for us. He's done fabulous editing. He has gone with us on shoots and used cameras and tried to keep me straight, tried to get me to pronounce names correctly, which I have a great mispronunciation of all the time. He's been good-tempered with me, and we just thank you so much for everything you've done with us, and we thank the ETV Endowment for sending us such a fabulous intern. Good luck next year at school. And if you listen on Saturdays from 3 to 6, if you can get the University of South Carolina radio station, you will hear some pretty good selection of music and a great DJ. So thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
All righty. It's really wonderful to have that help from the ETV Endowment. We've gotten a lot of stuff done, and Morgan's been a great fellow. It's fun to have young people around you, isn't it? We also want to say to Teresa that we're so glad that she's always with us and that she can bring us water quality tips and help us keep up with all the wonderful things that the Carolina Clear program is doing. And Teresa, you just always have fun information to share with us. Thanks for being a part of our team.
It's my pleasure to be a part of the team and get to join Team Making It Grow every night in Sumter to answer gardening questions. Our last comment was about powdery mildew on cucumbers. Kind of the same thing that applies to squash. Like Tony said, plant early and get what you can, and then just enjoy the rest of the summer and start again fresh next year. For more information, you can always visit us on our Facebook page 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we'll do our very best to get your questions answered. Amanda?
We are coming up, I think, on 9,000 likes. We'd sure like to have you make that bell ring for us. Tony, what's that? What you bring an orange spaghetti to the set
what
for?
it looks like. It's orange
I know
spaghetti.
you like clips and
Yeah.
orange, but I mean orange spaghetti.
I know it, but it doesn't taste very well.
Okay, what have we got here?
This is dodder.
Dodder.
This is actually a parasitic plant. It's
Yes.
feeding on this other plant. It actually grows over the top of it, and where I see it a lot is in swampy areas because it grows on those plants in there, and it produces kind of a hostoria is what they call, but they're little roots that go inside of the plant.
Almost like mistletoe does.
That's right, and it takes the energy out of the plant and uses that to live. That's why it's this orange color. It doesn't have chlorophyll.
My
in it.
goodness. And also, I know it makes seeds that get in the ground, and it's hard to control.
It certainly is. It'll take over a garden if you overwater sometimes, especially, and if you allow it to grow and continue growing. You can actually go tear it out though, and it'll get rid of most of it.
Pull it out. Okay. Tony, we want to thank you for the knowledge that you share with us, and particularly for the vegetables. And I think they're going to maybe name this pea, and when they do, it'll be a special day, and you'll come and share that information with us.
That's exactly right.
I think it'll be for a person who was beloved in the vegetable community for many years. And beloved is now the way we feel about you, Miss Vicki. It's so much fun having you come. You bring enthusiasm and youth to us, and lots of fun.
I enjoy every time I'm here. Thanks for having me.
And it's just so much fun that you're such a nut about insects. This girl really is just kind of a nut about insects, and she actually allowed herself to be the feeding specimen, I think, one time for bed bugs in the old days.
I was the guinea pig
She
in
was the guinea
graduate
pig.
school.
But she will be your host next week, and you will have a marvelous time with Vicki sitting right here in the host chair. So join her and have fun on Making It Grow.
Making It Grow is brought to you in part by Santee Cooper, South Carolina's state-owned electric and water utility. More information on green power and energy conservation programs online at santeecooper.com. The South Carolina Department of Agriculture, reminding you that certified South Carolina agricultural products help make South Carolina grow. McLeod Farms in McBee, South Carolina. This family farm offers seasonal produce, including over 22 varieties of peaches. Glory Foods, celebrating Southern food with a soulful heritage. Glory Foods, a way of inviting South Carolina back to the dinner table. FTC Diversified, a proud part of your local communities, providing communication, entertainment, and security. Art Fields, a 10-day art competition in Lake City, South Carolina. Additional funding provided by International Paper.